Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 12, text 10. Abhyasepi asamardhosi matkarma paramo bhava madardham api karmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. So Krishna has been giving a hierarchical instructions. The highest being always engaged in the thought of Krishna, absorbed in Krishna consciousness, which may be very lofty for a lot of people, ordinary conditioned souls. So that is why in the previous verse Krishna gave next level of hierarchy, which is if you cannot be always in Krishna consciousness, practice by Abhyasa Yoga, which is regulated principles of chanting prescribed number of rounds. Like you get initiated and you take to disciplinary way of practicing. If you cannot always remain in Krishna consciousness, make it a regulated discipline. And now in this verse, Krishna even lowers the bar. What if you are not able to do even that? Abhyasepi asamardhaha. Asamardha means not you're not capable of doing it. Abhyasa. Then he says, Mat karma paramo bhava. Mat karma means Krishna's work. Then just try to work for me, work for Krishna. Like you do some service for Krishna. You either literally doing service, pranair, ardhair, dhiya, vacha. We can serve Krishna in these four ways. One is prana, by our life, meaning actually doing our service physically. Ardhaihi, our wealth, by expanding it for Krishna. Dhiya, our intelligence. And vacha, our words. These are the four ways you can work for Krishna. So if you cannot practice abhyasa, if you cannot practice the regulations of bhakti yoga, like chanting prescribed number of rounds, taking initiation, following four regulative principles, those kind of things, then just try to work for me. Of course, this is in no way trying to say, oh, you should not take initiation or not take up chanting. Krishna is encouraging those who cannot, for whatever reason, social obligation or whatever limitation, that does not preclude you from spiritual progress. You can be a volunteer, you can serve Krishna, take some service, donate, so on and so forth. Mat karma paramo bhava, madardham api karmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. Karmani madardham, if you do activities for my sake, working for me, you will gradually come to the perfect stage. Siddhim avapsyasi. Perfection you will attain. So, you work for Krishna means one should be, Prabhupada says in the purport, one should be sympathetic to the propagation of Krishna consciousness. That's what it means. There are many devotees who are engaged in the propagation of Krishna consciousness and they require help. So even if one cannot directly practice the regulated principles of bhakti yoga, he can try to help such work. Every endeavor requires land, capital, organization, and labor. Just as in business, one requires a place to stay, some capital to use, some labor, and some organization to expand. So the same is required in the service of Krishna. The only difference is that in materialism, one works for sense gratification. The same work, however, can be performed for the satisfaction of Krishna, and that is spiritual activity. If one has sufficient money, he can help in building an office or temple for propagating Krishna consciousness. There was an incident during Sanatan Goswami's time. This was about 500 years ago. So Sanatan Goswami, he travels to Vrindavan on the order of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when he arrived there, there were still no temples. It was an open field. And the very first temple in Vrindavan was established by Sanatana Goswami, Madan Mohan Temple. Even if you go now, it's a tall structure. When you go on Vrindavan Parikrama, you go around, first you start around that Madan Mohan Temple. It's a beautiful structure. And so his efforts set a precedent, and other temples gradually got constructed. Like Govinda deity was established by Rupa Goswami, and so on and so forth. So these deities, for example, the Madan Mohan deity is said to have originated with Vajranabha, Krishna's great grandson. So to protect these deities during these Mohammedan invasions, they were buried. And by the time of the Goswamis, they were lost or forgotten. So the reclamation of these deities and reclamation of these lost pastime places was part of the mandate given to the Goswamis by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And particularly this story behind the discovery of Madan Mohan is very fascinating. So Sanatan Goswami had a dream in which the beautiful deity of Krishna was being worshipped by a humble priest from the city of Mathura. So Sanatan Goswami thought that if he could worship that particular deity in a grand way, it would attract many people to Krishna consciousness. But in the dream, the deity belonged to this humble Brahmana, and Sanatan Goswami could not convince him to give up his deity for the temple, for himself. So the dream ended without resolving that dilemma. So next day, when Sanatan Goswami went out for alms, to beg alms, he came to the home of a poor Brahmana, and upon entering his home, he saw exactly the events of his previous night dream. They were reality. And Sanatan Goswami gazed upon this beautiful form of Madan Mohan deity, the same deity who appeared in the dream. And he knew that this deity was meant to be worshipped in a grand way. And just as in the dream, the priest refused to relinquish his deity. But at that night, Madan Mohan himself came to the priest in the dream and insisted that he reconsider. And complying with the wishes of the deity, the priest entrusted the deity to Sanatan Goswami. And Sanatan Goswami, the next day, he carried the deity to the other side of Vrindavan and established the worship of Madan Mohan in a little hut. The worship was going on. And then there was an incident where there was a very wealthy salt merchant called Krishnadas Kapoor. He was delivering his goods by boat to a market in Agra. And it was a lot of money involved. And when the boat, it became halted and it could not be recovered. And all his goods were about to be spoiled and going to get waste. And then just opposite that place where the boat got stuck, there was Sanatan Goswami's hut. And this Krishnadas Kapoor, he began to pray for Krishna for help. And somebody said, this is a Babaji here. You go ask him for help. And so, seeing this Krishnadas Kapoor's despair, Sanatan Goswami invited him to worship Madan Mohan. And while he was praying before the deity, that boat got cleared. And he was very happy, elated, and he was able to successfully complete his business. And he profited large sums of money. And he became indebted to Madan Mohan deity. And so he agreed to, and then he asked, I want to do something for the deity, something for you. What can I do? And then Sanatan Goswami engaged him in building a beautiful temple for Madan Mohan. This was sometime in the 1580s. This is like 450 years. It's still standing tall and beautiful. So you see how everybody can be engaged. Madardham api karmani. You can engage in Krishna's service and help those who are propagating Krishna consciousness. If you are not directly engaged in the worship of Krishna or chanting the holy names and doing the direct services, you can indirectly help. That's what Prabhupada is saying in the purport. Even Rupa Goswami also. He engaged the wealthy, um, the army general, Raja Man Singh of Jaipur. He was under Akbar's army. So he was a wealthy man. And so he was engaged to build the great Radha Govinda temple. So this is good for the person who gives. Sometimes we think, oh, I'm giving, parting with my hard earned money. Just like, Bhagavatam gives this example of these honeybees. The honeybees, they collect honey, painstakingly. They go into each and every flower and they pull the most nectarian part and collect it and deposit it, and they keep working hard. It's a symbol of hard work, the honeybee. Yeah. And store it, which they neither eat nor give away in charity to other creatures. And meanwhile, the honey gatherer, the person who steals the honey, he comes, puts the fire, and takes away the honey. All the hard work is done is going to be benefit of this honey thief. So before that happens, it's better we voluntarily part with it and get the benefit instead of having all our hard work go for nothing. We can as well voluntarily give to Krishna. Lakshmi Devi is also called as Chanchala. Chanchala means flickering. That means she does not stay in one place steadily. She keeps moving. So eventually there will be time when Lakshmi will not be there. So voluntarily, why not do that and progress spiritually? And of course, whoever gives to Krishna, he is not a loser. Like how Krishna, that fruit vendor, he came to sell the fruits. Krishna was a small boy, a toddler, and he ran with his small palms, tiny palms, beautiful palms, holding some grains of paddy, and all the grains were falling, and nothing remained, hardly few grains remained. So he saw his parents do the barter, and he wanted to the barter and get fruits for himself, nice mangoes. And this woman was very attracted to Krishna, and out of loving affection, even though he didn't bring anything, she just filled his arms with a lot of fruits. And in return, what Krishna did, he filled that basket with jewels and gold. So Krishna does not keep, if our intention is to make a lot of money, Krishna will make us a lot of rich, make us rich also. But our true intention should be this rich, this positions, this prestige, this social power, all these things are bodily, temporary. They'll be there, they're fleeting. In few years, they'll be gone. So, what did I pray for? And what you prayed for is going to bring you a lot of trouble and anxiety. So, instead, you pray for going back to Godhead, engaging in becoming more and more pure, engage blissfully in Krishna service. That is the eternal happy situation that everybody should hanker and pray for. And then Prabhupada writes here, so he can either help uh, or he can help with publications. There are various fields of activity, and one should be interested in such activities. Like if you are not able to build the temples, help in publications. Like we are doing a lot of book distribution, sponsor for the books we can distribute. Like how in the initial days, Prabhupada wrote this Krishna book, the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and for the initial printing of books, he needed close to $10,000. And there's an interesting story of how George Harrison ended up sponsoring that. George Harrison is a very prominent member of the famous Beatles rock band. So he was in London, his Beatles, and they were in London. And the devotees went to London, and somehow, by Krishna's mercy, they struck a chord with the Beatles, especially George Harrison. He liked them, and they produced some records and all of that. So they were having nice um, relation. And then when Prabhupada proposed that to Shyam Sundar Prabhu, who was very close with George Harrison, Shyam Sundar Prabhu didn't like that idea. Prabhupada, he might feel we are making this connection with him just for money. It'll spoil our relation. He will not talk to us. We've gone so much into the relation. It should not appear like that. And Prabhupada said, no, it is for Krishna's cause. Don't worry. You ask. And he was hesitating. And Prabhupada said, no, you put it on me. Swamiji asked. And then one day in the evening, they were all having dinner, Shyam Sundar Prabhu and George Harrison and few others. And then very hesitatingly, Shyam Sundar Prabhu opened up and, hey, George, this is what it is. And Swamiji asked if you can help. And then George Harrison was surprised, and his eyes became a little big. And then Shyam Sundar Prabhu started to worry, oh my God, what did I tell him? What is going to happen now? All these kinds of negative thoughts were ringing. And then suddenly, the power went out. It was a blackout. They have never experienced such a thing in the recent past. And everybody was like in a state of bother. What is happening? What did happen now? And and then few moments later, the light came up again, and they were relieved. And George seemed to be relieved as well. And then his demeanor became quite pleasant. And he said, well, how much it is that you want? And then he proposed that. And then he said, okay, you collect the check. He happily gave. And then the relation further blossomed. And he also became quite advanced by that contribution. He wrote the forward or preface for Krishna book, beautifully written. And he started to chant and became a nice devotee as well. So that's what Prabhupada says. You contribute for the publications or for building of temples, and and then he says this voluntary service to the cause of Krishna consciousness will help one to rise to a higher state of love of God, whereupon one becomes perfect. So by serving Krishna, we develop taste for Krishna consciousness. Susrushoha Shraddadhanasya Vasudeva Katha Ruchihi Syat Mahat Sevaya Vipraha Punyatirtha Nishevanat. By serving Krishna, one develops the taste for Krishna consciousness. So, very important to do service. How Srila Prabhupada engaged several people in the beginning in varieties of service. In the summer of 1966, one Saturday night, some volunteers gathered to help Srila Prabhupada. They were addressing him as Swamiji. It was 11 p.m. and in Prabhupada's apartment, in the kitchenette, there was a light on, and Prabhupada was staying up and teaching two of his disciples, Kirtanananda and Brahmananda, how to cook. Because the next day, Sunday, they would be holding a feast for the public. And Kirtanananda had suggested, why don't we advertise it as Love Feast? And Prabhupada liked that name, and he adopted that name, even though it appeared strange at first. And the devotees had put up the posters around the neighborhood and made a sign for the window of the storefront. And Prabhupada said, if we should cook for at least 50 people. And then he said, this love feast should become an important part of our movement because the food offered to Krishna becomes spiritual, and whoever eats the prasadam receives great spiritual benefit. And as he was predicting, it became quite a rage. And that was one of the major attractions why those people were coming. And they were getting enchanted by the taste that they never had in their lives, especially cooked by a pure devotee offered to Krishna. And then slowly they were engaged in various services in the temple. One Mataji was saying recently, I was hearing memory. She walked into the temple and she was immediately given service. You clean those brass, paraphernalia for the deities and make garlands. She has never heard of garlands, what to me speak of making one. But she gradually started to do all of that. And eventually she became more and more eager for Krishna consciousness. So, Krishna consciousness can engage everyone from all walks of life. It's an universal principle. Krishna can accept, Krishna can accommodate, Krishna can engage everyone. Like how Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when he first met these young boys, these young men, Prabhupada and his friends, he saw them very, very intelligent, even though they were asking tough questions, as if challenging. But he saw that spark. Oh, these people, this man can be of great help for the moment. And he instantly engaged. Why don't you preach in English? Why don't you spread Krishna consciousness in the West? And that one instruction, you see how it transformed the whole world. How Srila Prabhupada took that to his heart, and he strived. He says in his during his he would recall how he took so long for satisfying the order of his spiritual master. But that was running in his mind. I should serve my spiritual master. I should do this for him. And he was trying to, when he was sufficiently prepared, even though it was little late in his life, he was close to 70. That's when he wanted to travel to America. And he faced a lot of hardships. And nobody was sponsoring. He had a sponsor on paper in America through some of his donors and friend circle. But to go to America was itself a challenge to get the visa and to get the ticket. So he finally found this elderly woman, a wealthy woman, director of India steamship, Sumati Murarji. She sponsored that trip. It was a Jaladuta ship. It was a cargo ship. And finally, Prabhupada, he got that success. And after Prabhupada went to US and then came back successfully, and then Prabhupada met Sumati Murarji, and she told him, I did not think that you would come back alive. That was what people were thinking, especially when somebody is old and he is going to a country which is so cold. But see how Prabhupada was so determined to serve Krishna, and Krishna was arranging everything for him. So you see how Prabhupada, he achieved success, and everybody can achieve success if our determination is to serve Krishna. Madardham api karmani. When Prabhupada came back to India, he gave a lecture and made this beautiful point. He said, our culture is Krishna consciousness. This was in Bombay at the time. But we are forgetting and becoming too materially absorbed. Lord Rishabhadeva says that this is not good because according to the law of karma, you will have to take another body, but you don't have to give up your hard struggle for material life. Arjuna was not advised to do this. He remained in his position and executed Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada then he concluded, I am begging. I have 42 temples in the West, and in each one there are 50 to 100 disciples. Thousands of books have to be printed. Please help me with this movement. So, and people did help, and those fortunate did help, and they got sufficient blessings from Krishna, and gradually they will make progress. I'll stop here. Anyone has any questions or comments? भगवद गीता एज इट इज की जाए, शीला प्रभुपाद की जाए, निताई गौर प्रेमानंदे, हरि हरि